Hey everyone, and welcome to another Kanoa Reviews. Today we talk about the latest Call of Duty iteration in the form of Black Ops Cold War. The announcement of this game arrived quite late this year due to the success of Warzone, but many of us were excited about coming back to the Cold War period and possibly having a continuation of the story set up in the first Black Ops. After a soft reboot of the Modern Warfare franchise, this wasn't that much of a stretch, and lo and behold, we indeed have a game now that follows the continuation of characters we know and love like Mason, Woods, and Hudson. Developers Treyarch and Raven Software return to this familiar territory, and the Treyarch campaigns have always stood amongst the Call of Duty franchises as some of the better ones, though Black Ops 3 might want to have a word with you on that. But even if they were not that great, at least they often did something quite different. Whether it being more brutal than most other Call of Duty games like World at War and the first Black Ops, having actual choices and different endings like Black Ops 2, or having co-op like World at War and Black Ops 3. This is why the anticipation was pretty high up again amongst fans, and also because lately Call of Duty had delivered some great campaigns with Modern Warfare, bringing it back to its throne with cinematic expertise. Call of Duty has always been about large-scale battles, with epic proportions as dozens, sometimes hundreds of troops take part in different battles. Since Black Ops has more of a covert ops feeling, you often work in smaller teams, which might work against the game itself. But I was very surprised to find out that this approach by Black Ops Cold War worked greatly in its favor. The game starts out great with a small homage to the first Black Ops, and then you taking control of Mason once more as you and a new character called Adler are meeting a Dutch informant in a bar in Amsterdam. Now, since I am Dutch, I have to admit that I'm very biased and really flipped out when playing this first level. This intro might not be that special to others who aren't Dutch, but it was so great to me to see my birth city be represented in a game like this with such detail. Games like Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway or Call of Duty United Offensive have really missed their mark on the portrayal of Holland. But Black Ops Cold War nails it with the unique architecture, moats, and curved bridges. Even some landmarks are visible as well, and small details like the inhabitants actually speaking Dutch is a great addition. One tiny nitpick I do have is that a lot of the signs and posters outside are all in English, which definitely would not have been the case, and though adding those in Dutch might seem like wasted effort, I should note that games like Medal of Honor Frontline did have signs and billboards in proper Dutch, and that game is 18 years old. But anyway, the intro is short and sweet. You chase this Iranian high-value target, and the choice system makes a return from Black Ops 2, but even gets deeper here. In Black Ops 2, you had certain parts in the game where you had a choice to make, like shoot someone or let them live. And you get to do the same type of choices here, but at the same time, also have to choose dialogue options. You will get different responses on what you say, and though it's nothing special by today's standards, it does add a little bit more immersion to the overall experience. The cool thing too is, like I said, you get the choice whether to capture someone or kill them, and choices like these will actually affect certain options or information you will receive that could help you with other upcoming missions. Then you take the role of the newest member of the team in the form of the character Belle. You can give your character a first and last name, adjust skin color, sex, background, and affiliation, and also some perks like faster aiming or less recoil. The game then drops you in the first of the Vietnam levels, of which there are 2 in total, and it was very cool to revisit Vietnam with this graphical fidelity. The Vietnam War theme does not get used a lot in video games, maybe because most levels would feel too similar with fighting in the jungle all the time. But I think the Vietnam War era is absolutely fantastic and has the potential for so many cool and untold stories in video games. The cool thing too with Black Ops 2 is that there are also a lot of sections where you're not shooting but just walking around base camp or other areas where you're not firing a gun but just soaking in the atmosphere. You can eavesdrop in on conversations of other soldiers or get a glimpse of what life was like back then. And the world feels more alive than ever, with every character doing something. Whether it's testing the radio inside a tent, playing some football while on a break, participating in an arm wrestling competition, or filing in some documents. It all looks great, and though you cannot really interact with any of this, I still love these sections because it's pure environmental storytelling and atmosphere. Really cool, and greatly appreciated that the game has these sections. The Vietnam level itself is fine mostly, and quickly displays something that is really great about Black Ops Cold War, and that is the level design. More than ever, the levels are open and offer different routes and even different heights on which you can traverse. Even on the first level of Amsterdam, you fight on the rooftops, but also have the ability to go underneath the rooftops or head into a side building and fight there. Same can be said for the Vietnam village, where you fight outside most of the time, but can also head through buildings and even head to upper floors to get a better angle and flank the enemy. And later levels still implement this, with even narrow corridors becoming so much more interesting since they often have 2 different floors and sometimes 3, giving you the idea of freedom to move within such a confined space. Call of Duty has been criticized for becoming way too linear and restrictive during the Call of Duty Ghosts period, and this is indeed true, and I'm happy to say that when it comes to pure level design, Black Ops Cold War does a stellar job of offering awesome varied levels with room to experiment in and try things differently. The Vietnam level also ends with an awesome over-the-top chopper section, and pretty much from that point on, you follow the story told in 1981 as you and the team go after this communist figure called Perseus, who has evil plans to blame the US for a nuclear disaster he's trying to direct. The overall story arc might not be that original, but the characters are all very unique and are well portrayed by their respectable voice actors. Each has a distinct personality, and though I feel like the characters as Park or Lazar could have been fleshed out a little bit more, the cast of characters do a good job of conveying the story to you. I do, however, then, find the storytelling within the missions themselves quite excellent. You soon will find yourself crossing the Iron Curtain in Berlin and head on over to the east side, where communist rule has made everything super strict and crap. It is here where you have a large section where you actually don't shoot anyone, but need to meet up with an informant in a cafe, and you can freely walk around and once more soak in all of that atmosphere. It made me realize that this setting of 80s Cold War espionage is something so rarely seen in video games, and it's a setting that works absolutely wonderful. It's very cool to witness this threatening setting, and the awesome thing too is that you really feel like a spy, since the game has you perform many different spy things, like head over to a cafe without drawing attention and making contact with a woman who you can recognize by the color of her umbrella. The game expects you to keep your eyes peeled on details, and it's all the better for it. It never gets to ludicrous levels, where you are scratching your head on what to do, but the added slight effort one needs to put into it is really awesome. Shortly after the cafe scene, you also need to sneak out and preferably stay hidden, and so the stealth sections get introduced once more. Games like Call of Duty World War II had these as well, but they worked like absolute trash, since it was never implemented very well and felt forced, as you had these short 20 or 30 second sections where you had to cross a forest without getting spotted. Here, you can actually take different routes. You can also choose either to leave the enemies be or take them out and even hide their bodies. In some ways, the stealth mechanics actually reminded me of games like Hitman or Metal Gear Solid, and that, my friends, definitely is not a bad thing. The cool thing too is that once more, you get to make choices on optional things like making contact with a captured informant. You can let this slide and never pay attention to it, but you might miss out on some information later on. But it's actually not all that black and white, and so if you head on over to free this informant, you might want to think twice if this informant is actually as trustworthy as he says he is. All these added options and layers really complement Black Ops, adding replay value and the immersion of molding your own adventure without going too overboard like a game as Heavy Rain. You are also expected to take photos regularly of documents and suspects. Sometimes you need to break into someone's house to look for specific documents, and it really almost makes it feel like you are playing an adventure game. You need to lockpick in a minigame that's reminiscent of Fallout, and it's all very different than what we're used to. I think this is awesome because the game still offers plenty of shooting, but now also adds so much other gameplay, and not only in the form of one single level. Along the way, you can also find optional intel, and this is really well implemented because many games have optional collectibles, but usually they serve no purpose. But here, these collectibles actually provide vital intel that you need to complete certain side missions, which are really awesome. These are missions where you need to do some additional detective or spy work, and also do some hacking and code breaking. And this actually does go a little bit further than just remembering a color, and will require a bit of math, some reading, and even puzzling with letters, which I absolutely adored. Again, it never gets too overboard with how difficult it is, and it never reaches miss levels of difficult, but some will require maybe a few minutes of thinking, and you really feel part of that whole Cold War spy setting as you try to break the codes left by the KGB or figure out who the communist intel agents are amongst a list of suspects. Really, really awesome, and hope to see more of this in the future iterations as well. The other absolute highlight in terms of missions is the KGB headquarters that takes great inspiration from the Paris level in Call of Duty World War II, but amps it up to 11. You play as the Soviet mole and need to acquire a bunker key to let in your friends from the CIA. The way you acquire this key can actually be done in many different ways, and once again, the game turns into an adventure game rather than a shooter. In this whole section, you don't fire a gun once, but instead walk around and try to pick up on hints on how you could solve this. You talk to various people, try out things, explore the different rooms and hallways, and can even access restrictive areas and hide bodies if need be. The way how you acquire the key also is really different and will have you visit various locations which you would not otherwise. There was, for example, one way to get the key that involved the server room, but I went for a different approach, and so I never even went to that server room, but I could then try that approach once more when I replay it. And this level is just once again so beautifully created and full of life and detail as you see how the Soviets are handling things in their own KGB headquarters. It feels very intimidating and threatening, and it's just an absolute blast to walk around there as a mole. Then the later levels return to the classic Call of Duty formula of just shoot, 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 and by that time, the game had already won me over with such amazing and varied levels and gameplay like the earlier mentioned sections. There is still one standout that involved the second Vietnam level, but other than that, it's pretty standard warfare. The shooting itself still feels great, and is something Call of Duty has always been so successful in. Bullet impacts feel great, and the weapons are really responsive. The overall gameplay in Black Ops Cold War feels a little bit more raw and slow compared to the other games, with the enemies having surprisingly good aim, even on normal, and actions like reloading or throwing a grenade taking more time than usual. It works though for this setting, though I still might prefer the faster gameplay like in Call of Duty 1, 2 or Modern Warfare. The game also has different endings and even some different levels you get to play as depending on your choices, and though the wrap-up of your choices wasn't too visually satisfying, it still did what it intended. The game also has a great zombie mode attached to it, which unfortunately for me, I probably will not play too much because none of my friends are really interested in this game. My only real critique of the game is that the campaign is still very short and you can easily complete the game in less than 5 hours. Maybe also the last few levels feel a bit too safe with the exception of the Vietnam level, but other than that, I surprisingly fell in love with this Call of Duty campaign and even like it more than the Modern Warfare campaign, which I still think is great and also has some of the absolute best levels ever in the form of those SWAT style missions. You do have to ask yourself, however, the question if less action in a Call of Duty is for you, because I can also see some people being disappointed by not being able to shoot as much or as often compared to other games in the franchise. But to me, that was a welcome change, and I loved the alternative that they presented me with. In the end, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War gets an 8.7. Hopefully the next game by Treyarch will be a bit longer, but still hold that quality that is presented with this one. I just love the different choices you can make, the great level design with different angles and approaches you can take, and the real feel of being in an 80s Cold War spy thriller was something I had never experienced like this before. The alternative for the same old shooting action gets greatly appreciated, and I already know that I will be returning to multiple levels more than once just to go out and explore again. Well done, Treyarch. You did it again.